Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Game Junk Podcast, episode 124, recording on Sunday, October 16th, 2022. My name is Frank.
My name is Sean.
And my name is Andrew.
And on this episode, we're going to be revealing our top 5 detective games of all time. I think revealing is a word used in detective stuff, perhaps inspired by a recent game release. The case
you could have said we're investigating our top 5 detective.
Well, we've
games,
already investigated. Now we're revealing our results. We're revealing who the killer is. I think I had it right. Even though I do not play detective games, I don't particularly like them. Huck, we're going to be leaning on Huck heavily this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Sean is a detective game poser, so he'll be talking about all the ones he probably bought and didn't play or tried briefly, but he has a top 5 list that's more comprehensive than mine. I've barely played these games. I've scraped together a shitty list, and we'll see where this takes us. So our top 5 detective games. And we all played The Case of the Golden Idol, which we'll be talking about and what we played.
Yes.
Correct.
I've played quite a bit of that, and we'll touch on Scorn briefly. I haven't played as much of that game, but those are the 2 new releases we'll be talking about this episode. So anything else? Everyone okay? Ready to go with the top 5 detective games?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So detective games. When I was doing a mild research for these lists, I found one article that was kind of breaking down detective games into different genres almost. Like, rather than calling detective games the genre itself, it's like a style of game that, could be an adventure game. Maybe it's an action game. Maybe it's a different type of detective game. There's lots. When I saw lists online, they vary. For my version, like, I did not put Batman, even though we all know the best Batman is where Batman's a detective.
Definitely.
If I included those games, my top 5 list would be all the Rocksteady Batman games. So I chose not to do that. And, I like my detective games coming down to deductive reasoning. That's what being a detective is all about. And that's what I tried to focus on here. How about you guys? What's your history and passion level of detective games, and what do you have to say about them? Let's start with Huck, the detective master.
Well, I would say my interest in them is high. Probably going back, let's see, what was probably the first? Probably Blade Runner by Westwood Studios was probably the first game I played that I would probably consider a detective game, if I would think about it. Maybe some before that, but that's really like the first one that probably hooked me. And then, of course, Quantic Dream. They got detective elements kind of in all of their games.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider those detective games. I saw them on many lists I looked at, but they feel just kind of like narrative adventure games. Like I'm not figuring anything out.
Well, spoiler alert, they're not on my list in the top 5 rankings. So that's where they list in terms of detective games for me. I still enjoy them. I also saw them on some lists. Don't agree with the placement on a lot of lists. Like Heavy Rain was high, and like you said, I enjoy those games for what they are, but they are not detective games, as you said. I would say they are like almost like like what's the like the button combo?
Games.
They're
quick time event games.
Quick time event adventure games. Yeah, exactly. But there are a lot of other games that have come out that I find...
Just to add to that, in detective games, you usually have to succeed at something. In those games, you can fail every challenge. You don't actually have to figure things out.
True. Yeah. Maybe that's the way you're supposed to play those games. Who knows? But I do like, exploring an environment, seeing all the little things that the designers have added to try to, lead you, or red herrings to lead you away from, the correct conclusion. And I must say, the amount of high quality detective games that make you use your deductive reasoning is pretty low, the total number. Yeah. And it is very hard to pull off. And there are definitely a few games that have done it well, but the list is short.
I wanted to put Clue on my list because it's like great deductive reasoning, like simple, catered for young players. Mm-hmm. But I think That is the essence. And I like in school when I was growing up, I loved doing deductive reasoning puzzles where you get information and like a series of statements and then figuring out what to do as a result, or figuring out this grid and eliminating possibilities. So when I play detective games, I want to see some element of that.
Well, my list is a mix of all. It's probably going to piss off Frank with a few of my choices,
Absolutely.
But what you were just
Mansion's on there.
It is not.
It's an adventure game, bud.
But what Huck is saying is true, is that there's not a ton of games that actually do, put you in the shoes of a detective, solving a mystery, putting clues together. I think it's tricky. And a lot of the ones that have come out, for whatever reason, I have not fully embraced. I don't know why. I'm always interested in them, and then somehow they don't hook me. So, we'll talk about it. But my list is all over the place.
Okay. Should we get into it then?
Let's get into it.
All right. I'll go first because my list is the least interesting. My number 5 is Among Us. I don't know if it's technically a detective game. I feel like there's deduction and detective elements within it based on how people act and what they think about. I think it actually captures things that L.A. Noire has tried to do with facial expressions and figuring out who's lying and who's telling the truth, like actually doing it with people you know. So in terms of, behavior and tells and figuring out things in a game, I think Among Us does it the best. Now, to be fair, I put it towards the bottom because it's really just copying games that have existed before, like the murder party games and werewolf games that existed in a board game context. So I don't think it's that interesting, but it's still pretty fun, and it's also a chance to say I'm still excited for Among Us VR, which comes out later this year.
Huge. It's going to be huge.
I like that pick. I actually think that's a great choice.
Thank you. Sean, you're up, bud.
Well, you already mentioned it, Frank. My number 5 is L.A. Noire, which I kind of toyed with, should it be on my list, shouldn't it be on my list, because I do kind of consider it a disappointment to some degree. I was so hyped for this game, and when it came out, it was kind of... It was just hard to really, the idea of the facial expressions, the motion capture, all that stuff, it sounded great in theory. I don't know if it totally worked for me.
Yeah, it's complete bullshit. And if I was doing my top 5 worst detective games of all time, L.A. Noire would be number 1. First of all, if you're a detective, you can't base your decisions on people's facial expressions. What if they're good at pretending? Like, you can't judge what's going to happen. Maybe you get hunches based on that. But first of all, even if it was possible, I might change my mind on that. But they completely fail. The subtleties of the facial animation are literally nothing. There is no system that's coherent when it comes to that. It's a complete disaster. It only works as an action game where you play as a detective. As a detective game, it might be the worst detective game ever made.
Well, I disagree with that because I think there's more to it than just watching people and basing clues and stuff on their facial expressions. There are actual clues and other things in the game, if I recall correctly. And I just think the atmosphere of it and, the whole, the story and everything was actually pretty solid. So, in that regard, I think it deserves to be on the list. Certainly deserves to be in the conversation. My number 5.
It is part of the conversation, and I agree. The setting and idea, had it worked, would have been phenomenal. But at its core, it does not thrive at detection. It fails at detection. And it succeeds at the things other games made by the same company have done better. So L.A. Noire is a delightful turd.
So I would disagree with the turd comment. I enjoyed the game. It's not on my list, though. I was considering it for an honorable mention, but this brings up another topic with how do you find clues in the environment? And L.A. Noire used this like rumble and sound effect when you were near a clue to identify, hey, you can hit the X button and you'll find something, which I think is kind of a cop-out. in a detective game, and I feel like detective games need to focus on a small area with like hyper specific details that you can explore and try to determine if it's relevant or not, but not too many, not overwhelming. Whereas LA Noire, it was just like wide open world. You'd get to a scene, and even that was pretty open, but nothing was really identifiable except for like if there was like a big like crowbar or something on the ground. Obviously, you're going to walk over to that. And like sometimes you'd go to a scene and they'd have the little like police flags or teepees, whatever they call them, like marking something as evidence. So obviously you're going to walk over there. But I think it did struggle with some of the more like fun, quote unquote, like fundamental things I would consider for a detective game. But I do still enjoy the game. I like it. Definitely the facial features fall flat and are difficult to understand what the hell to do. I think Frank didn't like it because if you pick it wrong, it affects your score, which then affects your trophy system, which is a big,
I mean, I think I tried to do it on my own, and when I realized it's impossible to figure out these facial expressions, there's like actually no skill at all, because the animations are so like generic. Then, or at least at the very least, it doesn't teach you what to look for. If there was a system where there's a standard set of kind of emotional responses, and you're looking for like a pattern of like raising an eyebrow or like moving their eyes in an opposite direction to see if they're lying, that would be fine if it taught you those things well. It does not. So I agree to make sure I get all the achievements.
Did I even say my number 5? I did not say my number 5 yet. So my number 5 is Sherlock Holmes Crimes and Punishments, which is kind of the first of the, I think, the rebooted, quote unquote, like Sherlock Holmes games that Frogwares did. And I really enjoy this game. I think they have a lot of really neat puzzle mechanics in them. I think that the overall clue finding is a little more organic than something like LA Noire. They don't just kind of, there is still the idea of like things being highlighted and you'd be able to select them, but there are like other situations where you can miss clues, and also they have this like deduction tree where you can go off on the incorrect path, and it seems plausible, and actually accuse the wrong people of wrongdoing. And I think that is like a really cool thing in a detective game that not many detective games actually do properly, and I think they pulled it off. I know that the second game, I think it's called Devil's Daughter, and then the next one that just came out is like a chapter-based game. I think it's just called Sherlock Holmes. Was not as good. It didn't grab me as much, but the first one really did a good job at capturing like a detective game, I believe.
It seems like there's some older ones too, like Nemesis and Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
Previous installments by the same developer, I think.
Yes. And there are earlier Sherlock Holmes games. Let me look them up because I have them.
I remember one on Sega CD.
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detectives. I think they were from like IBM back in the day.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. It's not on my list, but I think there's like a board game version of it as well, and
yes,
it's pretty well regarded, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm sure I'm not surprised to see there's a Sherlock Holmes game on there. We'll see if Sean has one. My number 4 is Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? It's
I'm actually, you said you're phoning in your list. I'm loving your list so far.
Thank you. I had to get inventive, but I think it's educational. And what I love about it is the idea that like the answers are in this book. Like you have to do research, and it uses like some real world resource outside of the game to figure things out. And the idea of research, I think, is important to detective work and finding out where things are. And it's an interesting way of presenting that in an educational way. And I mean, iconic TV show based on it, a simple format, like figuring out the criminal, what was
now, are you referring when you say
Loot,
TV
the
show?
warrant and the criminal.
When you say TV show, are you referring to the cartoons, or are you referring to the kid game show?
The game show, yeah. Which like kind of captured the element of the game, but the original computer game was pretty awesome. So one of the few detective games I've played quite a bit of.
It's kind of interesting that that game has not made a resurgence in like the past 10 years, because you think with, being able to I know we're not saying the G word anymore, but web search things.
Web crawler, yeah.
Web crawler things. That, it'd be so much easier to actually like discover the clues, and it would actually teach kids how to look up things on the internet. You'd think it'd be a perfect choice to like reintroduce to kids.
Microsoft does this in their rewards quizzes. You can earn rewards points by using Bing to do searches, and
this guy's plugging Bing now.
I've done it before. When I was really into Microsoft rewards and I discovered, I'm like, wow, that's how I got 3 free years of gold using all my Microsoft rewards. So if you want that internet detective, if you want to scratch that itch, look into Microsoft rewards. Quizzes, daily quizzes.
There was, I think, a mobile version of Carmen Sandiego at some point in the last little while, but it was kind of short-lived. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
An AR version of that where, maybe, I don't know, maybe not. I got some thoughts. I'll save them.
All right, my number 4 is Max Payne.
Max Payne? It's an action game.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's the debate. I think, in terms of capturing that noir atmosphere, I think
this isn't the best
amazing.
Noir games list, Sean. This is the best detective games.
Hey, I'm going outside the box. What can I say? I think
number one's God of War. Then what are we doing here?
I mean, I just think it's
trying to find out the identity of your son. There's a lot of mystery in God of War. You're trying to figure it out.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, I think Max Payne is definitely a detective game to some degree, and I think the story is solid. And yeah, I agree, it is mostly an action game, but I just remember that voiceover narration, being so classic, and yeah, I mean, I don't know if I ever played part 2. I did play part 3 at some point down the line, but part 1 is my number 4.
Yeah, if you really needed to zone in, or if I needed even more evidence as to why Max Payne is not a detective game, I would add Max Payne 3 is the third version of that game in the series. Is there any element of Max Payne 3 in any universe that you would consider to be a detective game?
Sure.
What?
I mean, he's a detective. Like, it's like part of the story, part of the character. But like I said, I knew my list was going to piss off Frank. Don't worry, there's some good ones coming up, Frankie.
All right.
I've actually never played a Max Payne game, so I cannot comment. But
I mean, the big thing was the bullet time.
Yeah, I remember that
kind of slow motion mechanic.
And wasn't there something with like crying babies or something that was like freaking people in the first one too?
Yeah, there's the maze where you hear the sounds. And
so for my number 4, this one I'm really struggling with. I'm not sure what to put in here, but I think I'm gonna lock in. I don't know. I think I'm gonna lock in Disco Elysium. Now, I have not beaten this game, but I've played a few different times, and kind of, I just like how the presentation is. I like how you can upgrade parts of your detective mind kind of thing. I can't remember what they call it in the game, but it's sort of like your detective skills you can upgrade. And it's like actually pretty tricky to discover some of the clues that are around the environment, but it is a small area, which really makes it nice to explore. So for those reasons, which is not very good reasons, I'm putting it at number 4. This is one of those games that's like I need to get back to eventually, play through it, and just power through and beat this game. But I'm putting it at my number 4.
I agree. The atmosphere and vibe is one of the best in any game, but I don't know. I just couldn't get into the actual exploration, and there's just too many options. It doesn't condense, like, you have to filter through too much information to get to the relevant things.
It's heavy.
And,
it's heavy.
I mean, some people really like the writing, and so they gravitate towards wanting to explore that environment. For whatever reason, my detective games are going to basically condense these elements and the exploration elements down to like very simple, digestible bits. And it's about processing information, not finding information.
Yeah, I bounced off this one too, but I got to give it another shot at some point.
I did give it another shot recently, and I was really disappointed when I played for like an hour and it didn't save anything I did the next time.
Oh no!
That's when I said, "Bye-bye. We're done with Disco Elysium."
Yikes.
Okay, my number 3 is Professor Layton and the Curious Village. I think I did everything when the first one came out on DS, and I just like the variety. It's lots of different puzzles. Some are deductive reasoning puzzles. There's an overarching mystery. To be fair, it's more of a puzzle game, but it does have a lot of deduction puzzles, and it's fun. I feel if any game on my list is a cheat, it's this one. But it does have classic deductive reasoning puzzles as well. So
I would definitely qualify this more of like a puzzle game, but I also love these games, so I'll give it a pass.
But it's a type, something in this realm that I completed and tried all the puzzles, so that's pretty rare.
Well, I will allow it as well, because my number 3 is Professor Layton and the Unwound Future.
I've got the same as Sean. I should not allow my own list. I'm putting Clue back in. I'm taking out.
I thought Clue was a good option, but yeah, I mean, like the puzzles are like, it's interesting in the sense that, and maybe it's a little bit outside of what we're talking about, because the puzzles are not necessarily like real world. You're solving like clues for a mystery. Like they're kind of like very loosely tied into the story that you're going through. But I like that though. I like those kind of puzzle games that, I mean, it's a pretty popular series. It's something that just about anybody can pick up and play, but there is a story across the whole thing. And Unwound Future, I like just because it's got a bit of a time travel kind of element to it as well. So
is that on 3DS?
I think it's just DS, that one as well.
DS as well? Okay.
Okay, my number 3 is a game I actually already mentioned Blade Runner. And so this is, I believe, technically an adventure game, but the reason I'm slotting it in here is that you are trying to hunt down a replicant, and every time you play the game, all of the replicants in the game are randomized. So I don't know if it's any character, but there are a select number of characters that can be the replicant, and when you start the game, you do not know which one it is. So you actually do have to try to follow the clues, figure out who is the actual replicant, which is quite unique, and I don't think has ever been truly replicated again in another game in this fashion, where you could replay it. This is almost like
the replicants.
Yeah, this is almost like a detective roguelite, where
I like that.
It's randomized every time you play. Pretty interesting.
There's some elements of that. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego as well?
True. Yep. And there is a remaster right now on Steam, but all the reviews are not good. Apparently, they messed up the port or the remaster quite thoroughly. So if people are interested in checking this out, there is a 1-part Let's Play of this game on our Game Junk YouTube channel, youtube.com/GameJunk.
Nice.
And you're playing, right?
I'm playing, yes. I'm playing.
Yes.
With the original CDs. Classic. I still have them.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
I know. I purchased this game.
All right, my number 2. I'm not proud of this, but there's a lot of theorizing, deduction, really, to put this game on the list.
Oh boy,
at number 2, and it's Return of the Obra Dinn, which I haven't played that much of, but based on recently playing The Case of the Golden Idol, how could I not? I'm going to go back to Obra Dinn and play it because I love the art style of Obra Dinn. I loved the idea of it, the filling in information and how you organize information in that game is really well done. And there's no reason why I shouldn't like it. I did like it. I think I just got stuck at some point and abandoned it. So need to go back and finish that game. It is quite an achievement. So yeah, Return of the Obra Dinn, number 2.
Okay, my number 2, Frank, just cover your ears for a second.
It's a Batman game.
Batman Arkham VR. VR.
Uh-oh.
Because and I wasn't going to put any of the other ones on the list, but then I remembered this game, and it really is puzzles. And
it is. When you see the crime scene, you're rewinding things and trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and I actually, talking about these games, I'm surprised there aren't more VR detective games. Like there's a couple. There's one that I've had my eye on called like The Invisible Hours or something like that. There's a few others around, but it feels like a really good, it's like it's kind of the perfect way to actually, search rooms and actually interact instead of just kind of pixel hunting. So it would make a lot of sense, I think. But yeah, Arkham VR. I don't know. I feel like it didn't get great reviews when it came out, but I had a really good time with it. So
I liked it as well. It was my first, shall we say, transcendent VR experience. To my recollection, it was also Hux, and it induced a day of sickness. It was just the VR. Nothing
Just the
else.
VR. Totally just the VR.
And I like the game as well. I think out of all the Batman games, it's the closest to a detective game, but I still think you got a bit of a Batman detective bump going in on there, and I don't like it. You know what they need to make for Sean? 1960s Batman VR game.
yeah, I mean, I've been asking for any 60s Batman game. I'm all in on that, but not sure if it'll ever happen.
Probably not. My number 2, I believe we talked about this a couple episodes ago, Her Story, which is not a traditional detective game for sure, but definitely captures the essence of trying to figure out clues. And I like that it doesn't ever actually tell you if what you have chosen in your head is correct. And it's kind of up to you to deduce if you've actually made the proper choices or not, or if you've even figured it out. So for that reason, I love Her Story. I think it's a great game, and everyone should try it. It's not that long, and there's some clever aspects in it with how you find the different video clips, and yeah, I like how the ending works out.
I do not like that. I think it's interesting, but I would not like a game where I don't know if I've succeeded.
Well, have you played through it though?
Is it like Immortality? Did the credits roll at some point?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay. I did play that game for a couple hours. It's good.
Yeah, so I mean, once you find all the clips, like there's a certain point where it says, "Oh, you should log out now," or whatever it says. I can't remember. But basically, like by that point, you've definitely seen enough clips where you should be able to deduce what you think happened, kind of thing.
Okay. My number 1 is The Case of the Golden Idol, which I played this week. It just came out this week. And for me personally, I can definitively say it's the best detective game I've ever played. Basically getting into what we played here, but each scenario is unique. I think that's what it has over Obra Dinn. It's not, your success on one scenario isn't dependent on previous ones, and the idea of this overarching mystery carrying forward, and it's self-contained, and it's the perfect level of information. I didn't have to use a hint ever. I struggled, but then eventually figured things out. And there's alternatives. If you're not good at like figuring out the information presented to you, you can use like exhaustive methods. It all comes down to you have 2 or less things incorrect. And with that, on top of everything else, you can figure things out in exhaustive ways if necessary. So it gives more than one way to succeed and figure things out. And I'm sure people solve things in this game in a completely different order than I did. I mean, in one of the puzzles, I solved the whole thing before I got the subsections of information figured out. So,
well, should we maybe go into more depth a little bit later and just kind of leave this how it is? Like, discuss actually more of like how you play the game?
Sure.
After?
I agree. So I'll leave it at that. The Case of the Golden Idol, I think it's very cheap as well. It was like $20 or under.
It was like $10, I think, $12 or something for Canadian.
In my head, I had 16, but I'm not sure.
What the hell?
The ghosts of Film Junk Past.
Someone in that room also does not like Sean's list.
Drop that mic.
Surprised that has not happened more often, because these things always loosen up for no reason.
For no reason. Like, what do you got to put? Like the plumbing tape around these things to get them to stay in place? It's absolutely ludicrous.
Well,
either way, the Case of the Golden Idol.
I'm gonna turn off my mic.
Is my number one detective game of all time, and it made me realize there is a version of detective games I would like. It's just you just have to think, you have to use your noggin and deduce what's going on.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna hold my mic right now because I don't know if this is gonna get back on. Frank kind of already stole my thunder with my number one. It is Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? I was kind of joking, like, when we were talking about doing this list, that I could just do all Commodore 64 games, which I probably could, but I mean, I don't know. A lot of them are probably just adventure games, as we've been saying. I mean,
Position was a really good.
one that I will just mention as an honorable mention right now. There was a game called Murder on the Zindernuf. You're like on this blimp, and you have to question people, and it really is like you got to accuse people and stuff. So that one was pretty good. I don't know that I ever fully figured out how to play that game as a kid, but no, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Played a ton of that. There was like a bunch of spin-offs, like Where in Europe is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the US? Like I had a bunch of them, and yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Frank, great for learning geography. Still know a lot of capital cities just from this game, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's I as we've said, I'm surprised it hasn't come back. I think it still holds up to, you know, in terms of a game mostly for kids, but it's a classic.
Definitely. I'm kind of ashamed I don't have it on my list, actually, but my number one is Return of the Obra Dinn. I love this game. I think it basically paved the way for Case of the Golden Idol in terms of how to do deduction properly. And I didn't put Case of the Golden Idol on mine only because it's so new and like I haven't beat it yet. I've only played it for like 2 days, and I feel like if I put it on the list, I might regret it later. But I think it's definitely going to be up there. Like Frank said, with Case of the Golden Idol, this game just does the deduction properly. You have to solve, you know, who died, how they were died, and who killed them for each scene you look at. But then the real thing, similar to the Golden Idol, is that when you get 3 correct, it doesn't matter what order, it marks them off, locks them in, so you know those 3 are correct, and now you know that those 3 people you cannot use them anymore in your further reasoning down the line, which helps reduce the scope of your, you know, mind space down just enough where you can make more and more deductive reasonings just a little quicker with like a little more help. And there's also a lot of intuitive things in Obra Dinn as well, similar to the Golden Idol, where if you look closely enough to the clues, it'll actually do it like show you visually, you'll be able to deduce through visual clues the information you need if you just look carefully enough and connect the dots. And I think that's what great detective games are all about. And I think Oberdin really was probably the first game that really, I thought, did it exceptionally well.
Where I give the edge to Case of the Golden Idol in what I've played is Oberdin's a little more repetitive, right? It's just like very similar scenarios, where in Case of the Golden Idol, every chapter is something completely different. The type of things you're figuring out is different. They're like separate, and every one is like a new game in a way, using the same rules. So I love the variety of Case of the Golden Idol.
Agreed. So I have a few honorable mentions that I feel, as the detective game aficionado, I should bring up and talk about, but not too many, actually. I was kind of surprised, but I almost feel like I should mention Murder by Numbers just because I love Picross games, but it's not really a detective game.
I was going to put it there, but maybe, Picross, or was it No Noozle?
No Nozzle?
No, but the type of puzzle it's called. It's called a Nana.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think it's something else. Anyway, I'll figure that out. But those are deductive reasoning puzzles at some level.
Yeah.
You know what? I failed. I should have put Minesweeper on my list.
Minesweeper. Yes, a classic. But a couple others that I didn't really see on, well, some I didn't see on any list, but there's a game called Jenny LeClue, which is a fun little, I would probably say it's more of an adventure game than a detective game, but there are still some puzzles in it that are really fun, and I didn't play through this whole game, but I really enjoyed it. I would almost put Deadly Premonition up there, although that game has like a lot of jank, but there's something about it that's just, seething with the weird sort of detective nature. Danganronpa series I saw in a bunch. I really enjoy those games, but they are a little more linear. There is still some problem-solving stuff going on, but I find them mostly linear, and you don't have to do too much crazy thinking outside the box. I got Case of the Golden Idol on mine, obviously. Police Quest 2, which I put on as an honorable mention, because I feel like, although those games are probably considered, almost point-and-click adventures, I mean, they're not really point-and-click, but that game had a lot of stuff that you could miss, and you could kind of get different endings based on, and just you'd see different scenes. Like there's a scene where you could actually go scuba diving and find the body, and it was like 10 years before I actually knew that existed. It was only after I returned to it, like 10 years later after playing it, that I ever discovered you could do that, and I don't even know how I discovered it. So stuff like that I think is kind of neat about like detective games, where there are clues that you cannot find unless you do just the right stuff. There was a Game Boy game I played called Deja Vu. I don't know, did either of you guys play this game? Or a Game Boy
I was going to mention
that.
I think that was out for
Nintendo,
PC and Mac and stuff as well. But yeah, it's an adventure game, but I think it's definitely there is a mystery and stuff. So.
And it is quite limited in like what you can do in it, because it's such an old game. And then the last one I wanted to mention was the Blackwell series, which is more of an adventure game, point-and-click adventure game. But there are some, almost like all it's created, published by Wadjet the Wadjet guys, and there's like a few puzzles in all of these games where you have to deduce certain things and then do a search in your computer and find an extra piece of information. And I find like that searching mechanic is used so well in these games, and it does give you that satisfaction that the other detective games give you, like Oberdin and Case of the Golden Idol, when you kind of put the clues together and get the proper solution. So those are all my honorable mentions.
The Deja Vu box art I remember distinctly for NES.
Oh yeah,
never played it, but it's some sweet. It's aged incredibly well.
Oh yeah,
the box art specifically. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have like honorable mentions, but like just to throw out some other games that maybe are in the conversation, like the Judgment series. I don't know. Have you played those, Huck? No?
Sorry. No, I have not. No.
There's a game called Kona, which I'm pretty sure I own, but I haven't played. But I saw it on a few lists. Kona.
I think I've played this game. I think I also own it.
Hypnospace Outlaw. I've been meaning to try this game, and I still have not got around to it. But this was more of a you're like an internet detective, quote unquote, and it's kind of like going back to like early '90s internet. Kind of got a sense of humor, but I've seen that on some lists as well. So, but yeah,
some good board games. Love Letter. I don't know if anyone's played Love.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
a great deductive reasoning game. Guess Who? Also not bad.
Classic.
Mastermind. Maybe Wordle could have been considered for this list. I'm not sure, but if you really just want some deductive reasoning,
Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective as well as a deductive game.
Okay. And I've never played Scotland Yard. Is it a more advanced version of Clue or similar?
Kinda. It's more frustrating, from what I remember.
It is deductive. You kind of have to work as a team to corner somebody who's like going across a map, but you don't know where they are. You kind of just know what method of travel they're using, and then at certain points they have to show themselves. So it's like a manhunt type scenario, I guess.
Did you know Clue was actually, the original name was Cluedo?
Yeah, I've heard that. No, I've heard that. I don't know why I've heard that. I don't know if there's like another alternate video game version that's called that or something, but...
No, that's the original version in the UK. It was called Cluedo.
Oh, okay.
That's fucked. Anyway, a little trivia for you out there.
Interesting.
I just found that out literally 30 seconds ago. Anyway, we're done. Detective games, should be more of them, especially good ones with deductive reasoning. And hopefully games like Oberdin and Case of the Golden Idol are paving the way, and we won't have to bloat our lists with garbage like Max Payne 1, our action game.
I was trying to keep it to games I've actually finished too, so, you know.
All right. Okay, moving on to what we played.
Yeah.
Sean,
should we just dive into...
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, should we talk more about the Case of Golden Idol?
Definitely.
Let's do it under the what we played banner. I'm almost at the last puzzle. I'm halfway through the final puzzle in the game.
So what number is the last one?
11. There's
11. Okay.
Chapters in total. So each chapter presents visual scenery that you can zoom in on certain aspects or investigate for all the details of information. The information is presented in a multitude of ways. It varies across everything. And then you have like a thinking notebook, and the game tells you what you need to figure out. Like, whose identity is this? And sub challenges of mapping information or deducing information. And then overall, usually the last thing you do is explain exactly what happened in this scenario. And each scenario, there's like this loose, it's like takes place over years, in this idea of a golden idol changing hands from people. And it's following this idol over a course of years. And there's some familiar faces that carry over through the scenarios. But each one is a unique scenario where you figure out who died and how, along with other information. And each one of those scenarios is so unique and just changing. I mean, it's basically taking a deduction puzzle and changing the outputs, but it's presented in such a unique way that it always feels fresh. I want to do the next one. And it just gives out the perfect amount of information, which is what all deduction puzzles come down to at some level, like the difficulty of them. But there's hard deductive reasoning puzzles. There's easy ones. I feel like every one of these is in like a perfect middle sweet spot. and it just the difficulty just maybe gradually ramps up through scenarios. Probably more just in terms of complexity, not in levels of deduction. But I am having I just want to keep playing it. Like I do one, I start the next one. I'm like, this is going to take a half an hour. And then I do it anyway. I just want to keep playing this game.
Yeah. So one other thing, which I don't think you touched on, is like, as you investigate things in the world, did you touch on this? Did I blank out when you were talking about how you get the words?
Oh, no, I did not.
Okay. So as you're investigating the world, basically there's like shiny little glowing dots on things you can investigate, and sometimes when you click on one of those, it'll have like a letter or some sort of something with a word in it, some sort of description, and
it's underlined. It's always underlined.
And so names, places, things will be underlined that are pertinent to your investigation, quote unquote. So when you click on these underlined words, they go down into a list at the bottom of your screen. Then those words are then plugged into your they call it the thinking board or whatever, but basically you have usually 3 panels, sometimes more. The left one is basically a description of who done it and what happened in the scene as a whole, and there are blanks where you have to fill in people's names, weapons they used, or how people died, or what was there. The middle section, if you could think of the screen split into 3 parts, the middle section is everyone that's in the scene. You have to name every single person that you see in the scene, and then the writer section. Though. Oh, does it?
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, so I'm on number.
All these things, yeah.
Yeah, it's changing.
Later into the game, you're figuring out completely different stuff, which is where it gets really interesting and how it introduces variety.
Okay, yeah, and then there is usually like case context sensitive something to figure out. But it's really clever how they, go about. I think I talked about a bit on the last show where there's the map with the castle near the river, and you can deduce that, that's how you get the name. That's spoiling like the second puzzle or something like that. But there's like other ones with like a dinner table, and you have to try to figure out who's sitting where based on just like a picture of people standing around a dinner table. And it's really clever how they give you the information to be able to deduce what you need to deduce. And I'm really enjoying it. I finished, I think, the 6th puzzle. I'm on the 7th, and I'm just getting to the point where it's getting quite a bit more complicated with the amount of things you need to do. And I find they hide a lot of later on. I don't know if it gets even more so, but there's definitely more symbology getting worked in, and you have to almost like solve these like, almost like hieroglyphics. You almost have hieroglyphics. You need to like almost like, solve what they mean, which is kind of neat.
Of that, but I think you're referring to the symbols on the back of the idol. I think it kind of peaks with that stuff, but there's similar versions of that going forward.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And there's the one with the vase where you have the book with all the symbols.
Yeah. There's a really good one where you have, I can't even spoil what it is, but it's the last thing you figure out. And there's this like hanging idea that they establish in the scene. And then once you put it all together, you figure out like you would have no way of knowing this unless you figure out some other meta element to the whole thing. And that like blew my mind. And I don't want to spoil it.
I'm also really enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as far as you guys, but I am enjoying it. I mean, it's interesting because it's at least where I am now, which is like basically almost on the 4th case. It seems like a pretty simple game, I could see that things are getting more complex in terms of the amount of stuff you kind of have to solve. But I mean, it's a 2D game where you have a few different rooms you move between. You click through all the things, gather all the words, and then you kind of have to start piecing it together. But it does have a very addictive element to it. I'm not exactly sure how or why, but it's just, I think because you're like, I'll just fill in a couple of things that I know here. And then you just start building on it, and then you just kind of have to keep going.
That's why the way the designer presents each scenario with like different sections of information, like it guides you through how you should think about the entire process. It very cleverly presents sub-steps of deduction as to how you should figure things out. I circumvent them sometimes, and I think there's different ways of solving the puzzles, but it's a really good game at teaching you how to play, or like giving you enough information to teach yourself and not hit barriers. I've not used a hint in this game. I have no desire to use a hint, and that's a testament to a good puzzle game.
Well, so the thing I wanted to ask you guys about, and like, this is maybe a criticism of the game, I'm not sure yet, but like, do you feel like you have to guess a lot? Or do you, every single thing, you know exactly why? Like, I know sometimes there's like a process of elimination, but I don't know, there's a few times, like, I mean, certainly the first couple puzzles, they're small enough that I'm thinking to myself, well, you could just trial and error, plug them in until it says you got it right, which obviously is not that fun. But, and then it gets more complicated where that wouldn't really be possible. But I still feel like you get down to a point where it's like you're close, and then you could start guessing. And I'm like, but shouldn't I know?
I don't think you have to guess, but I think the game allows you, as I mentioned in the top 5 list, to use guessing and exhaustive measures to figure things out if you're stuck. Like, you can still make progress without conceptually understanding everything about the scenario. It's like an alternate way of figuring things out. So, and then once you maybe guess and figure something out, that leads to a bunch of like new conclusions. So it presents different ways of understanding the scenario, which I love.
Yeah, I don't find I'm guessing a lot, but there are a few times where I think I have it, and then it tells me that I'm wrong. So then I just kind of start like, oh, maybe it was like this person. So then I swap a couple names, and then maybe I get to the point where, oh, only two or less are correct. I'm like, okay, well, now I can just kind of like swap a few and try to narrow it down. So there was a couple where I didn't really follow the exact thing they wanted. So I just was kind of like swapping names in and out until I got to that 2 or less. And then I was able to kind of cheat it where I could put in one I knew was wrong and then just start swapping names into the one I didn't know the answer to. And then eventually when I hit on that, I was like, okay, now I know what that one is going to be. But so that I felt a little cheap.
I could see that being a criticism of the game, but it just makes it more playable, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would say that probably I didn't, I don't think it was unsolvable by any means. I think it was more me being lazy, not wanting to go back. So my only criticism is that when you find these letters and other information in the environment, they're not stored anywhere for you. You have to go back through the environment if you want to read them again and, click on them, try to remember where they were to begin with, and then try to click on them and, reread all the information. So maybe to improve on it just for like usability sake, it maybe be nice if there was another, sort of like archive of all the stuff you've seen where you can just quickly pull it up and reference it so you don't have to search around the environment again.
Yeah, so you do find sometimes important documents that you refer to a bunch, and they're just in the environment, so then you got to go back to that room if you want to check it or something, which, yeah, that would be nice to have a little place to check that in the menu.
Mm-hmm. But overall, like, really, really captures everything that Obra Dinn brought to this genre, and I would say does it maybe better. I do enjoy exploring the like 3D environments of Obra Dinn and kind of getting the different perspective of what has happened, but this has a totally different take on that style, and I think it pulls it off really, really almost perfectly, if not perfectly.
So one other thing, like in one of the early levels, there's so it's pretty much static images. You see people kind of moving on like a loop, like a slight animated loop, but like there are, at least in 1 or 2 levels, like moving things that seem to factor in. I don't know does that ramp up more as you continue through the game or not really?
There's versions of that later on, but it's typically the same type of thing.
Okay.
You're almost seeing it over a span of like 2 seconds. And
kind of
in that seconds, you're observing the scene through that 2-second window once someone died.
Yeah, the animation, I think, replays every time you come into the room, and then it kind of loops the last couple frames. So if you want to see like the whole thing, you can kind of go in and go out. But I don't think there's any like hidden clues hidden in that sort of like animation that happens the first time or anything that you're missing or might miss.
Well, there was kind of one on the second level, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, where I think it was, yeah, like, I mean, you have to actually, like, you see it
That one
moving.
does loop. Yeah, that one does loop.
But I mean, you might think that it's just a background element, but you actually have to click on it as it comes by. So
there's a flashing indicator if you're using that there.
Yeah, so I can see this game. Now, I know they do, when you start up the game, it says, do you want to play with the, the recommended mode, which is have these little flashing lights, or like a traditional point and click. I think I mentioned it last week, but I can't imagine playing this game with the flashing turned off. It would kill all the fun of the game, because the fun is not finding the clues. That's just busy work at the beginning. The fun is doing all the deduction stuff and figuring out what slots in where. So I'm glad they added that mode, and use it. Definitely use it.
Yeah, I would be curious. I feel like the early levels, maybe you could do it with sort of like the pixel hunt, and it wouldn't be too bad, but I'm guessing by the end it would be overwhelming.
Well, I mean, Frank, how many, because I think I've only gotten it where there's like 4 scenes max, 4 different scenes. Does it get higher than that in the later levels? I think I'm on the 7th.
No, it stays, I think 4 is the max.
4, okay. So, I mean, manageable, I suppose, but some of the other scenes are pretty complex, so you'd be clicking all over the place trying to find everything.
It kind of reaches its peak complexity at around 4 or 5, and then it's just variation. Like it's just, this is a totally new scenario. I'm figuring out completely different things. I'm doing a different symbol mapping. It's really good. And then as you get to the later scenes, you need to refer back to previous scenes. In the last one, you're using lots of information from the other scenarios.
And also, I'm only whatever 2/3 of the way through the game or whatever, but I like how the story arc has been presented. You don't have much information, but you get enough by doing these deduction puzzles that it fills in the story for you. And I like the arc it's taken. It has not gone where I thought it was going originally. Even when I played the demo, I thought it was just going to be, some sort of like family feud type thing, storyline. But it's definitely evolved into something much more. And I think it's pretty fun so far.
Yeah, you reminded me of something talking about the story. Oh, it kind of reminds me of Unpacking in a way. Like how Unpacking, you see these recurring things through different scenarios over time. It's got an element to that where I remember this person from a few times back, and you can, this might have happened. It's not as it's not about that. It's not as like the focus isn't on that, like something like Unpacking, but it's a nice sub element to the game.
Yeah, and it is, having that carry you forward always gives you a nice starting point, because you're like, okay, I recognize that guy. So as long as you play the game like in pretty quick succession of your scenes, you will recognize people from previous scenes and then be able to like immediately plug them in, which is kind of nice.
And I don't want to spoil anything, but the game uses that in interesting ways as you progress through the scenarios. Like someone I know from a previous scene is supposed to be here and they're not, and why aren't they there, or are they there? And anyway, it's really good. It's an amazing game.
Yeah, and for cheap, grab it.
Yeah, check it out. I think it's just on Steam for now, right?
I would think so.
I believe so, yeah.
And maybe the developer, Color Gray Games. I also really like their logo. It's like the hex code for gray.
Yeah.
It's very very cool. I'm looking forward to future games from this developer. Actually, no one had this on their list. I've only played it briefly, but would Papers, Please be a detective game?
I guess you could probably slot it in as one. I mean, it's I would say more maybe like a memory game or a comparison game. I don't know if you're really like deducing anything. You're really just kind of comparing documents.
I think it comes down more to commentary, and through it calls it a puzzle simulation where I'm looking right now, and I guess that makes sense. But
also, Lucas Pope though, same guy as Oberdin.
Yeah, I should go back and play that at some point. Okay. Should we talk about Scorn next? The other major release?
Yeah, let's do it, man. Everyone's talking about Scorn, right?
Are they?
No, I don't know. It feels like it's a bit of a dud from what I'm seeing so far.
I have to be honest. I was obsessed with Case of the Golden Idol, and I kept putting off trying Scorn. I finally tried it last night, and I only played about an hour and a half, mostly because I was not digging it all that much. And I do love the look of it. The vibe is awesome. Like when the game was being shown and people were talking about it, it's because of that Giger-inspired art style and like just kind of gross, uncomfortable setting the game takes place in. And that is a complete success. But in terms of gameplay and design, I think how I'm looking at it right now, everything feels like an exercise in making the game longer, not more fun. So it's probably a small team, budget concerns. So it's like, here's a room and go find stuff on your own. Do it slowly. Don't move too fast. And then when you encounter certain puzzle mechanics, you don't know what to do at first. So you spend more time traveling between the puzzles than solving the puzzles. And then the first puzzle you actually solve is like a slide puzzle in a way. And it seems like a slide puzzle that's been intentionally made very difficult. So you have to spend like 20 minutes to a half an hour doing it. Like I took forever doing the initial slide puzzle, and I'm like, this is not fun. Like it feels, all I'm thinking is like, this is just to make this game long. That's it. It's like a way of having you stay at the spot so that they can say the game is 5 hours long or whatever it is. And that's what it feels like. I'm not saying doesn't have interesting ideas, but it's not that great of a game.
Yeah, I would say it puts out a pretty bad first impression. Like the visuals are cool. Like definitely if you're into that kind of stuff, like Giger, his art and obviously Alien, Cronenberg stuff, like there's body horror and it's like these machines that you're working are like you're sticking your hands in and they're squishy and gross and stuff. So I like that, but everything else, it feels like the order that you discover things in is like intentionally confusing. And I think there is, I'm sure part of the reason is they want to put you in this weird alien world and you just aren't told anything at all. You just figure it out. And it reminded me a little bit of Inside in that sense. Like I feel like in that game, there's mechanics and things that happen and you're not told explicitly what to do, but it's just, you hit a button and it's like, okay, that makes this happen. So maybe I need to do this to make that happen. And you kind of start to piece it together. But this one just, for the first puzzle that you're trying to put together, like you're walking around. Like for me, I was walking around for at least half an hour trying out each of these machines. They make something move and you're like, okay, did that do anything? I don't think so. And you start to realize, okay, there's a track here. So probably need to move something along the track. But like I missed one of the consoles that you can interact with. Which is
easy to do because everything looks the same.
Yeah. And so like I had to look it up and then I was like, oh, there's something there. And then I okay, that was the first thing I needed. But like there was no way I was going to find that. Like I thought I had looked at everything. So it takes a while. Once you kind of get that ball rolling, it's a little better, but I want to give it a chance. I guess what I would say, and maybe a lot of people don't realize this, it's not an action game so far. Like, I think there is some action later that happens, but it's like pretty much strictly a puzzle game. Like,
it's not adventure puzzle for sure. Like the walking around is an example for me where they don't tell you that you can hold LB to move faster, and you barely move faster. Even a map would help a game like this. Like, everything feels like a conscious decision to then the game will be too short. Every fix, I have like a fix every time. Well, you could have given me this information or guided me to this. And it seems like every time the reason to not do that, the only thing I can think of is, well, then it's a 2-hour game and people are going to complain that it's too short, which is a bad way to design a game. And I understand you could go under no, it's about discovery and figuring things out on your own. It's interesting that I'm playing Case of the Golden Idol, where, as Huck kind of said, the menial tasks of gathering the information you do really quickly. And then it's about figuring out what to do. Where this game, the menial stuff is what you spend most of your time doing, and then a very little amount of time solving the puzzles. Once you get to the spot, it's like getting to the places you have to solve the puzzles. And that's not fun. It feels like a bit of a chore going from place to place.
Yeah. So
it's not like horrible. It just, it's not as fun as it could be. It's eliminating the fun at its own expense.
yeah, there's enough there that I kind of want to play a bit more, but I would love to see the stats on this. And I don't know if they have, I'm assuming they must have some kind of Game Pass stats or whatever, but like, how many people drop off after 10 or 15 minutes and never come back to this game? Because it's probably pretty high.
I had to push myself to finish that first puzzle.
Yeah, me too.
I played an hour and a half, and I basically solved the first puzzle and went a little bit further.
Yeah.
I'm watching some gameplay video right now, and it has everything you guys are saying. That's what I'm seeing on this. And I mean, I'm not experiencing it, but this guy solved the slide puzzle, but I could tell he edited the video. So he cut the video. So I don't know how long it actually took him, but so it took him about 10 minutes or something, but there's definitely some cuts in the video where he was probably like, fuck this, I'm gonna go look up the answer and come back and cut this out. So I can see that.
I haven't said it in a long time. It used to be my statement of this show. Playing Scorn.
Say it.
Who thought this was fun?
Yeah, I think it does apply here. And, it's like one of those things where it's like, I honestly didn't really know what the gameplay was supposed to be going in. It was like the game was kind of sold on the visuals.
Big time.
Then you come in and you're just like, this is the game? This isn't really what I thought it was, but yeah.
I definitely assumed it was like more of an action-y, like alien shooter game for sure, but I must say the visuals are very impressive, very aliens, and
when the menu screen is phenomenal. Like when I started the game and saw the menu and there's an animation to transition, or like a cinematic to transition.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
From the menu to the game, I'm like, this game is fucking amazing so far. And it peaked early. Because then, even early on, you walk into the first room and there's like this landmark of a beam of light and a chair in the center of the room. I'm like, this is awesome too. Like it looks good. And then you realize after that, you're just walking from place to place. And again, it feels pretty extended for the sake of making the room big and travel time between devices longer. I mean, there's a version of these puzzles where you put the things right beside them. They don't have to be in offset rooms somewhere else completely. Like, that's a conscious choice to make the room bigger, to make the player take longer to explore. Like, everything, because you could easily condense these elements into a smaller room and have the exact same puzzle. The game does not want to do that.
Yeah.
There are solutions to all the things we're talking about. So I get it. Like, it's not even the developer's fault at some level. It's game reviewers and consumers saying a game isn't worth money if it isn't a certain length. Like, and then developers have to make their game worse as a result. But great games don't care.
I'm still watching this, and there is like some actually really incredible animation on some of the things you come across, and I feel like game may have the same syndrome as like Kenna Bridge of Spirits, where it was like created by artists who put the art first and not gameplay. And so it looks incredible, it shows incredible, but once you get your hands on it, it falls down a bit. And I feel like that may be where this is, because it is really an impressive looking game, very fluid animations, and some really impressive stuff. But I mean, it doesn't look that fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's short enough that I think I might stick with it after once I'm done some other games, because I do like the world. But it's definitely, the gameplay is, the best way to describe it is a chore.
Yeah, well, I mean, so far. Then the weird thing is, you hit the pause menu and you see the controls, and it's like telling you, oh, press this button to shoot and do all this stuff. And it's like, oh, it'd be cool if I could actually do some of that stuff right now, but I can't. So, yeah. Kind of disappointment so far.
Huck, did you have anything else you played?
The only other thing I played was the Lego Skywalker Saga game again. So I started at the episode 1, and I decided, okay, I'm not... Normally when I play these Lego games, I get obsessed with collecting all the stupid little dot things that are around. And this time I'm like, you know what? Screw that. I'm just going to beeline this baby right end to end. And actually it was pretty enjoyable, because the first episode was only maybe 2 hours long, if that. It was actually quite quick. And then you're able to hop right into the next one. So you're not like, I thought it was going to be like this like 8-hour slog for each one, but actually wasn't. It was pretty quick, pretty reasonably paced. There was a few scenes that were cinematics that I thought I kind of expected would be gameplay, but other than that, pretty good. I'm in the second episode now. And I don't know why, but they have like a bunch of boring like escort and like long walking sections, which is obviously not fun. Who thought this was fun? I don't know. You didn't need to make the fucking clone space colony. What do they call that place? I don't know. You didn't need to have Obi-Wan walk down all the hallways. You could have put the room you need to go to a little closer. No one's gonna, no one's mapping this out.
Stretch out that runtime.
Yeah, no one's mapping this out to be perfectly like the exact size as it was in whatever the diagrams were for the concept art. But overall, it's okay. I mean, some of the controls are clunky, especially in some of like the spaceship battle scenes you have to do. But I do enjoy the humor. I think the voice acting's pretty good in it, actually. And yeah. I don't know. It's okay. It's like a fun little game. That's it. That's all it's.
Yeah, I mean,
silly little boy.
Wanted to play that more with the kids, but they just have not had any interest for some reason, so haven't really gone back to it.
Yeah, my kids actually had a ton of interest in the Case of the Golden Idol. They were loving sitting and trying to figure out the puzzles with me. I was trying to explain to them what I was like looking at and trying to do, and my younger son wanted to literally just like move the stuff with the mouse. He wasn't really paying too much attention, but my older son was actually trying to give some input, and so it was pretty fun.
Cool.
Sorry, before I embarrass this, it's funny little boy, not silly little boy in Phantom Menace, before people lose it. I'm embarrassed. I am sweating.
Quote fact check.
That's all I've played.
Do you have anything else?
No, not really. I think that's it for this week.
I got a couple other things, but I'll save them. Just playing a lot of Cult of the Lamb as well. And I want to try a little more Hyper Demon, which I played.
What is Hyper Demon?
Oh, yeah.
I saw it on the Metacritic for top PC games of the year, and it's this like intense shooter, that I haven't even figured out yet. It's like almost a puzzle figuring out what I have to do in this game. But it's very highly reviewed, so I'm trying to figure out what the fuss is all about. Very mysterious game. It's a very mysterious.
This is the like psychedelic kind of game.
Oh, it almost looks like you're in a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, it's crazy. I got to play more. I can't say enough. But the only thing, you cannot use a controller, and I'm not good at keyboard and mouse controls, and I suck at the game. I need controller support.
You should remap it or something.
No.
That's weird because you're playing it on Steam.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay. Steam has some pretty good remap support and like Xbox controller support.
The Steam Deck has like actually like a lot of user submitted control schemes.
Maybe I'll try it on Steam Deck.
So give it a try. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's it for this week's show. Check us out on youtube.com/GameJunk. Let us know any detective games we missed. Let Sean know how bad his list is and how half of his stuff isn't a detective game. Also, the Discord link is on there as well. On Twitter, Sean is FilmJunk. Andrew is My Angry Commute and Equilibrium Sis. And next week, who knows? Gotham Knights, which is a debacle so far. People are just looking for reasons to shit on this game, so I can't wait to see the review scores. I feel like there's another, not that it's a big deal, Uncharted Legacy Collection comes out on PC, and what's the other major release you were mentioning, Sean?
Ghostbusters. Spirits Unleashed, I think it's called.
Also intrigued by that, and we're hitting a few weeks away from Ragnarok.
And Plague Tale, right?
Oh, that's the one. Yes, Plague Tale Requiem.
Is that moved up that quick?
Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah,
so.
18th tomorrow, or I guess today, as of people listening.
No, tomorrow. It's.
Oh right. Oh right. We've rolled over into the next day. My mistake.
That's all right.
We hit midnight, baby.
All right, thanks for listening. Bye bye.